Hello everybody and welcome to another Top 5 Records video. Because the new David Bowie documentary Moonage Daydream has just hit the cinemas, I thought this is the right moment to do a top 5 with the best David Bowie live albums. Now, live albums? Because I already did a video on the best top 5 David Bowie studio albums, and I've been constantly thinking about what are Bowie's best live albums, because he is an artist who kept constantly changing, and you see that back in his performances. And I think there have been loads and loads of very interesting releases, live releases from Bowie. So I think it's so tough to choose, but nevertheless, here I have it. I have made a top 5 list with the best David Bowie live albums, which give a beautiful insight in his touring career. It's just amazing. And I'm gonna start off with an album from the Diamond Dogs tour, which is an interesting story, and I'll tell you, I'll also take you along with the doubts I had. For example, there was the first David Bowie live album that was released was David Live. This is, I believe, in 1974 or 1975 release. This is the first British pressing of that album, David Live, and this was recorded at the Tower at Philadelphia. It's a terrible show. The first David Bowie live album, David Live, it's a terrible show. Why? The band was not informed that it would be released as a live album, and that is, you should pay them extra money for that, so they got on stage with a fury and a fight. Bowie did not have his evening. So David Live, the first David Bowie live album, is not good. You might think, was the entire tour not good? No, not at all, because at the end of the tour he did something phenomenal. He did this. He decided that during the tour you should change the attitude of it. He got more soul in there. He was also getting bankrupt during the tour. It was a very expensive, grand stage performance, and he thought, you know what, I'm gonna get back to the core of making it different. So at the end of the tour, it was this. This is also called the soul leg of the tour. The Plastic Soul leg, because this was leading up to the release of Young Americans. And what you hear here on this recording, and I really love this, is that David Bowie was sore. He doesn't have the energy anymore. He is totally down and out, and that makes this a beautiful live album, beautiful special live album. Yet, this is not the number 5 of my list. I'm sorry for taking so long. The number 5 of my list is a recording he did a couple of nights before or after the David Live show, and it's this live album, Cracked Actor. I believe it was also recorded or at least mixed by Tony Visconti, and this is a most gorgeous live set. Bowie had his night here. He was skillfully performing. He was out there. It's a beautiful set list. It's a 4.5 disc of vinyl. And this is him on top of his game at the Diamond Dogs tour. And until this release happened, I had no clue how good he was in those totally cracked down years. The title Cracked Actor, it's there for a reason. Also because during that same time they shot a documentary about him called Cracked Actor. It's a very interesting documentary. Especially if you just see Moonage Daydream, go ahead and search Cracked Actor. It goes together quite well. This is a man who's somewhat in his prime, but he's down and out, and you can hear that. And that makes Cracked Actor number 5 of the list of best Bowie live albums. I'm immediately gonna dive straight into the number 4. Without any other records from that tour. There have been some interesting releases, but for me it was a clear shot. I didn't have to think about this. David Bowie, Something in the Air. Now the first time I heard this album was, well, I don't want to say 20 years ago, because I found a download, I'm very sorry about that, a download on Napster or something, some of those download sites, because I was looking for, I didn't know what David Bowie sounded like live. There wasn't a lot available, and then I came across this 1999 recording in Paris, Something in the Air, and it is beautiful. This is a David Bowie you have not heard. He is so intimate here. It is such a beautiful live show. He is singing it's intimate because the songs of that album, ours is a beautiful album. Ours has been underrated amongst Bowie fans, in my opinion. Beautiful album, and the way they sound live. I mean, the choice of songs is also, this is not your typical Bowie setlist. He starts off with Live on Mars, beautiful opening, very sensitive. After that, Thursday's Child, beautiful ballad from ours. Something in the Air, also one of those beautiful, gorgeous ballads. And then he puts in Word on a Wing, which comes from the Station to Station album. Also a gorgeous, gorgeous ballad, but from a different period in his life, but somehow they all blended beautifully together. Can't Help Thinking About Me, that's the only misser on this one. You shouldn't have put that on there. Beautiful, slow, soft version of China Girl. After that, Always Crashing in the Same Car, one of my 70s Bowie's favorites. Survive, also brilliant recent Bowie song. And the list goes on and on. This is actually quite the beautiful ode to the Hours album and to his own aging. He picked the right songs to tell about his aging story, and Bowie was at this point brilliant live in a completely different manner. If you're a fan of his VH1 Storytellers performance, which is also a beautiful live show, but this one beats that. This one beats that. More songs, even more intimate, and Bowie in a unique moment in his life. That was Something in the Air on number 4 spot. On number 3, we're gonna stay in the 90s. Because this, to me, is one of the ultimate David Bowie shows. This is much more of a typical David Bowie 90s show, if you can speak of that. He had his rougher edges in the 90s until he started doing there are actually 4 phases in his 90s. He started the 90s off with the Best Of tour, David Bowie reaffirming the audience that in a certain way he got back, but he also wanted to leave the past behind, and after that he had a much more of a jazz phase, interesting jazz phase. Then he got his drum and bass phase with the Irving situation, and after that it came the Hours, the more ballad, the more reflective phase. And all 4 of them stages are brilliant. This one has its rough edge. This one looks at the past, looks at the future, but lives in the present. The opener, Quicksand, is one of the most beautiful live recordings you'll ever hear. The way he builds it up, the way Gail and Dorsey comes along, and it makes for the most mesmerizing, beautiful, intimate opening. I believe that this cover photo is during that song, because I believe it's a 12-string guitar. You can hear that. It's so good. And after that, he goes on to do The Man Who Sold the World. And after that, a compilation of Drifting Blues, The Cheatin' Genie. And then he ends off side 1 with I'm Afraid of Americans, which really kicks ass. I've heard some of those rougher 90s songs not go so well live. None of that here. It's just full and powerful. After that, Battle for Britain, beautiful rendition of Fashion, 7 Years in Tibet, one of his 90s masterpieces. And then another side 3 is Fame, Looking for Satellites, and Under Pressure. Under Pressure with Gail and Dorsey, one of the best vocalists and bass players around. Then side 4, The Heart's Filthy Lesson. I mean, the 7 film song, so good. Scary Monster, Super Creeps, Hello Space Boy, Little Wonder, Dead Man Walking, White Light, White Heat. He couples White Light, White Heat to Oh Superman by Laurie Anderson. So he puts in a Lou Reed song, and after that a Laurie Anderson song. The two of them were married at that time, which is interesting. And he ends it off with Stay. I mean, this is such a bizarre setlist. There is no heroes in here. There's not even Space Oddity in there. And you know what? You're not missing them. I love those songs. You're not missing them. Bowie reinvented the way he could sound live and the way you experience a Bowie show. In a certain way, it's a very fulfilling, typical Bowie show. But it does not give you exactly what you might have expected. This one, Look at the Moon, gorgeous, gorgeous live album. Number 2 spot. I had to include a Ziggy Stardust show in here. And I was in doubt. Shall I do this? The live Santa Monica show. in which you can clearly hear that the band, they are fresh, they're energetic. The set list has more hunky-dory on there. Oh, beautiful. I mean, this is so interesting because this is the beginning of Ziggy Stardust. And it's a very challenging record. But, given the choice, if I had to choose, then I choose this one. The Vinyl Ziggy Show. Why? It's emotional value. The emotional value of the show. I mean, he's not as energetic as on the Santa Monica Show, but you hear someone saying goodbye, and that is emotional, and that makes for such a thrilling experience. I mean, there are moments in here which are so brilliantly gorgeous. The medley with Wild Eyed Boy from Freak Loud, All the Young Dudes, Oh You Pretty Things. It's in the Moonage Daydream documentary. It's gorgeous. This Space Oddity, this My Death. Oh, it has so much tragedy in there. And when he ends it off with White Light, White Heat and Rock and Roll Suicide. I mean, this live album it's a beautiful recording. The quality is very good. And this is a legendary moment in rock history. If you find the Santa Monica Show, buy it because it's energetic, it's awesome, you'll love it. This one is in the list because obviously it's one of those legendary moments in time. Now, number one spot. Some people say that this was the first good David Bowie live album stage, and it was indeed the first David Bowie good live album. It's the Isolar Tour. And I'm going to choose something from the Isolar 2 tour. I was in doubt because there's also a very beautiful Nassau Coliseum recording from the Isolar 1 tour. But you know what? I thought I'm going to stick to one Isolar. Although both are different tours, of course. But I'm going to put one Isolar tour in there. Because the Isolar tour for me is the ultimate David Bowie tour. And this is a good live album. It's good. It's not as mesmerizing as the one I'm going to put on there. They shifted around the order of the songs. It's got a good mix. It's just not as thrilling as what's on there on the number one spot. Nor this one isn't also on the number one spot. I know, this is terrible. Broke my heart when I bought it. But it's tough to find this one. The Live in Berlin, 1978. Why is it interesting? Because Bowie was living in Berlin. It's somewhat of a homecoming show. A home-staying show, actually. The Alabama song is on there, which is his Berlin song. He doesn't play it that often live. So, beautiful, beautiful live, short live album, because it's just one disc. From the Isolar 2 tour, but not the number one spot for me. The best David Bowie live album. Welcome to the Blackout. What a gorgeous, gorgeous David Bowie experience. This, to me, is... First of all, this is, for me, his most interesting live phase, situation. It's tough to say because he had so many beautiful reincarnations of himself. But all right, you know, I think his Berlin years were some of his most fascinating. It made some of his best albums. He also later on made his best albums, but the atmosphere, something was going on the Isolar 2 tour, and this recording in London, and you can also see the version of Heroes on this album in 35mm in the Moonage Daydream film. So I'm begging Parlophone, I believe Parlophone has the rights. I'm begging Parlophone to release that on a Blu-ray because I want to see this show on Blu-ray. The 35mm in the Moonage Daydream film is spectacular. But this show, what it contains, first on, Out of Silence, there is Warsaw. One of the most beautiful, haunting songs Bowie ever recorded, and brilliantly used in Christiane F. Kinder von Balzo. And that goes on into Heroes. Is it his best performance ever of Heroes? Tough to say, because there are beautiful acoustic versions. He did beautiful versions of it later on, but this is the one that comes closest to the experience of the way he felt lost in Berlin. The experimental sound is there, and after that he puts on What in the World, a beautiful song. After that he goes on Be My Wife, The Gene Genie, Blackout, Sense of Doubt, also one of those gorgeous atmospheric Bowie songs. Speed of Life, Sound and Vision. Hearing Sound and Vision live is one of the, it's so good recorded, and it's such a lively situation, and you hear Sound and Vision, Breaking Glass, Fame, Beauty and the Beast. This album is such a product of that phase of Bowie. But then he goes back in time. He goes to play 5 Years, which is one of his most beautiful, gorgeous ballads. Soul Love, Star, Hang On to Yourself, Ziggy Stardust. You know, you have the Ziggy Stardust period in this show that's so gorgeous. He ended off of Suffragette City, and then he goes to the final record. This is a 3-disc release, 3 final disc release. Side 5, Art Decade, beautiful Alabama song, Station to Station, which I think is one of his best songs, and the way it builds up the atmosphere, it's so amazing. And then the final 3 songs, DVC 1-5, Stay, and Rabble Rabble. This is an ultimate David Bowie show. He was in great shape. This sounds spectacular. It's also a beautiful vinyl release. Yeah, I just keep raving on like a madman about it, but it's so beautiful. You know, I'm not sure if I'm showing it right, but the way he's out there, mesmerizing. I really love this record. I'm pretty curious. What do you guys think? What are the best live shows by David Bowie? The best live albums? I mean, I know I left the Realities tour out of this one. How could I have done that? I left the Let's Dance tour out of there. And I know the video of that tour is not so good, but the Montreal show of that blows you away. There's a beautiful LP in the 80s David Bowie box. The Glass Spider tour has terrible recordings, but also has beautiful recordings. I mean, on a bad tour, but we could have an awesome night. So it's so tough to decide. But nevertheless, I'm pretty curious. What do you think? What is the best David Bowie live album? Leave a comment below, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.